There's this myth that the rugged individualist should be the idol of our age, that a pair of bootstraps and self-determination are all a person needs. But there's another way to view the world. As John Donne said, no man is an island, and I believe we're meant to be connected. This series is my attempt to showcase the people I know and love who are building communities with creativity and passion. People from around the country who are working on building a stronger bond between people. I want to show that we don't arrive at the beloved community through grand actions or sweeping legislation, but through the daily commitment to positive action by the people around us.
I don't understand how anyone could not like Bruce Springsteen. Ever since I was a kid, he's been one of the most important musicians who I listen to. And it's because he represents so much of who I want to be. He's a talented songwriter, a manic showman, and someone who's able to give voice to the people that we usually forget about. Springsteen has shown me what it's like to be a truly good American citizen. And part of my feelings on Bruce come from the fact that I grew up listening to his records pretty constantly in my house. But I always just assumed that he's like pizza and that everybody kind of dug him. And then I met Tony Panciera. And Tony has no affection at all for Bruce. It's something we really disagree about. And in conversations with Tony, that was the first times I really had to articulate why Springsteen matters so much to me. But what's cool about Tony is that he doesn't view disagreements as an opportunity to prove how smart he is or how eloquent or how good his beliefs are, but as a chance to learn from others. Tony and I met during City Year, where we served together for 2 years up in New Hampshire. And during our second year, Tony was responsible for organizing training sessions for the Corps. And he was really good at it because he gave many opportunities to those first-year Corps members to lead sessions or lead parts of sessions, and worked with them to help them articulate, their thoughts and opinions and beliefs, and to be able to get up in front of a crowd and share their stories. And the Corps loved him because he let them have a voice and a part in it. So while Tony and I may disagree on a few things, political issues, and how great Bruce Springsteen is, we have a true friendship that lets us learn from each other and support each other at times when we really need it. And I think that's what this is all about how we can disagree with each other but still work together to build something that matters. So I'm really excited for this episode of Pinpoints featuring Tony Panciera, and I hope you enjoy it as well.
So I was born in Columbus, Ohio. I moved to South Central Alaska when I was a little kid. And then when I was entering 6th grade, moved to Central Kentucky, kind of at the border of where the plains start meeting the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. And then after 5 years, I moved out at 16 and went to finish high school in Southern Ontario in Canada. And then from there, I did 4 years of university in Northwest Ohio, and then came out to New Hampshire to do City Year, where I did 2 years of City Year. And then I spent a year in Providence, Rhode Island, and now I've been in Boston for 2 years. I was homeschooled through the end of 3rd grade. I made most of my friends through a couple of the programs I was involved with at the school, homeschool programs that I would participate in as like field trips to go do things that normal school kids would do. or church. And so I think that I had these different settings, but I didn't have the same sort of school environment that a lot of kids had. It was also rural Alaska, so it's not like there was, 20 kids my age within a half-mile radius. There was, a couple kids across the street, a kid another street down, and then a couple more kids, at the end of where our street hit the main road. So it wasn't like there was a lot of that community. So I think that I grew up as a child. Community within my family was very close. I think I have an older sister, 3 years older, and then my parents. And I think that our family was just very close because of a lot of those factors. So I think I entered school in end of third grade and made friends. I think I went through a lot of what a lot of kids go through of just figure, what does this social environment mean? This is all new, right? But they go through it 3 or 4 years earlier in a certain way. And it's different because you're at a different age by that point, but I have learned over the years to adapt to make new places home. So home is much less tied to a place than it is to people or what I make out of it. My childhood home in Alaska, we moved, when I was going into middle school, so that's kind of long gone. My parents are right now moving to central Pennsylvania, so there will be soon, and I'm not even getting back to that house before they move, so there will soon be kind of no remnants of childhood home in terms of a place to go back to. Right now it's still kind of there, even though my room has long been a storage room with my bed and boxes of my stuff in it, right? So I think that home for me is much more about the people and about what feels like home rather than a place. With having traveled around so much, the question I sometimes get is, what place was the best? And I can't compare them. They're not comparable entities, partly because I was at such different kind of ages and stages and points in my life. I think if you say, if I could go any place that I've been to right now, where would I go? That one is pretty easy. That one's Alaska, just because there's a grandeur and a beauty in nature that I grew up around and was surrounded by and was just immersed in from this early age, and I don't get on my day-to-day anymore in any way, shape, or form even close to what that was. So I would love to go back there and visit. But each place has its own richness and has had amazing people in it. And I think I've been really lucky to be as mobile as I have been. I had a friend and a roommate at one point during college who was from a town nearby where we went to school in Northwest Ohio, and I hadn't really realized kind of what I'd missed out on by being kind of so transient growing up and bouncing around so much. But this guy had friendships and family all in the town that went back to when he was in diapers, right? And as I was reflecting on this in college, I think the relationship that went back the farthest with the friendship that I could really say was still a friendship based on those the criteria of still being even remotely in touch goes back to early high school, which it's just a different it's a different scale and a scope, and I'll never be able to experience that other one. So I think I'm curious about it, but I am also really grateful for what I have been able to see and experience, and the fact that part of my personality and how I can adapt to situations and meet people and feel a certain sense of comfort in just kind of up and moving every couple years or so. I attribute a lot of that to the fact that that was what my childhood was like. So I don't have the one piece, but I think I got something very different out of it. There was a lot of rich folk traditions and culture in Kentucky that I think people often dismiss that state for. Not bashing on New England, but I think since I've been in New England, I feel like there's a lot of negative undertones anytime Kentucky gets mentioned. And I think that it's a place that, because of some of the extreme poverty in parts of it, and because of some communities where there's been generation after generation after generation that haven't left those communities, there's this kind of mentality of being uneducated and this and that, and there are components of that in pockets, but there's also some really incredible people and some communities that embrace the traditions and the culture of the past and blend that with their own, and really don't get caught up in the rat race and the politics of a lot of decision making, and can enjoy, going out for a hike and going home and sitting on the back porch and playing fiddle. Like, I think that there's just a lot that there's a lot of beauty there and a lot of rich culture that that sometimes gets no one knows about because no one goes there. No one goes to Lexington for a vacation. Like, no one goes to Louisville, for their honeymoon. Well, I'm sure some people do, but it's not in this part of the country, in New England. It's not something that many people from up here are exposed to. So I think similarly to how you see trends in state-to-state rivalries of almost any neighboring set of states, Kentucky always gets a bad rap from this part of the country. So just something I've observed. I was in Kentucky, and I was at a fairly small school, and going back to talking about how I made friends pretty easily, I didn't always make friends easily, especially in middle school. I think I struggled a lot in school, both being just kind of like adjusting to this very different world than I'd been exposed to, as well as to a school environment that was not did not particularly challenge me, did not particularly engage me, and did not really cater to someone like me. I was a sensitive little kid, and I'd been homeschooled for a few years and fairly isolated just from a lot of the regular mainstream American world, if you will. So yeah, it was an awkward transition. So I did 6th grade out of school. It really wasn't a good fit academically or socially or a lot of things. So then I went to a school and carpooled with a friend in the next town over to a Catholic school. So I finished 8th grade there, so I did 2 years there, and then that school ended in 8th grade. It was K through 8. So I didn't really have another option, so I came back to the school I'd been at before. And I did a year there, I did another year there, and I was so disengaged, and probably some of it was my own fault, probably some of it was, or a lot of it was just it not being a great school and not being an environment that I had really any interest in being in. And so after a couple years of that, and then the social environment not really being that much better, I mean, I wasn't wanting to go to school because all my friends were there, because I knew people there, I got along with people there, but I wasn't close to people there, or to many people there. So after a couple years, my parents they had looked at kind of what this was doing to me, and they said, this is, we see kind of what this is like for you. We want to give you the option to do something else if you would like to do that. So they said, you can stay here, keep going to this school, or you can kind of move out and live in this other community and go to the school your cousins went to. So I thought about it and decided to opt to the kind of new and flashy thing. And by that point, I'd been at the one school for 1 year, entire time growing up, I was never at a school more than 2 solid years until college. So I just like, I'd bounced. And so I was just like, kind of like, why not do something new? And I really was not happy where I was. So I moved out. I boarded with a local family. The school wasn't a boarding school, but it was like small Mennonite school. So not like old order Mennonite like a lot of people envision with like bonnets and kind of more like the Amish in terms of their lifestyle, but modern Mennonite, right? So it was also interesting contrast too, because my dad had grown up Catholic and my mom had grown up Mennonite. So I'd gotten both of those like subcultures of their identities infused in my academic experience at different points, which was, I still don't know if I really processed that. But it was just interesting to be exposed to a bunch of different religions. And I went to a non-denominational church in Kentucky, and we'd gone to a Presbyterian church in Alaska. And then I didn't go to church when I was in Canada. So it was an interesting kind of journey through faith as well. But moved out, the school environment, academic environment in Canada was far more challenging. And I think I found a community and made some friends. I think there was also a component of not making, there was a similar component of not fitting in, like not being one of the cool kids, but getting along with everyone, but then definitely also had some really strong friendships there that I had not had in Kentucky, or at school in Kentucky. I had some of those outside of school, but it was a good experience. I think it was a point in my life where, in a lot of ways, I just needed some independence, and it helped grant me that, and I think it allowed me to get some of that and some of those things out of my system, or out of my system in a different way before going to college. Like some kids go crazy first year of college, and maybe I went crazy first year of college too, but I had more experience kind of like getting out some of that, or at least learning how to be self-reliant and independent earlier. So my best friend was a pastor's son, so I would spend a lot of time at their house, which is right across the street from the church. And I think that even from an early age, I struggled with some of the like, this doesn't all add up sort of like syndrome, if you will. I think I'm really grateful for the exposure and for the fact that I think I can see where both by my parents' kind of conditioning, but also this sadder collection of stories and rules and guidelines for living life. I think that a lot of that has shaped me, regardless of how firmly connected I am to it or not, in terms of a religion and an ultimate truth. I think that the journey's been good. I think I was, so I mentioned that stuff before. I also went to Quaker meetings for a while. I kind of completely did nothing for a while. I've done some things with Unitarian Universalist churches, or Universalist Church. I think that there's a lot of things that make a lot of sense about all of it, but there's nothing that makes all the sense about any of it. So I think from that lens, I feel I'm living proof of some of the value that it's given me, but I also feel like I'm not worried about going to hell if I don't make it to Mass every week. And I'm not worried about my future kids going to hell or going to eternal purgatory if they're not baptized as soon as they're out of the womb. Like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of good stuff in a lot of different religions around the world. And I think I try to live my life without judging people on what they choose to believe. and kind of hope similarly that folks would do the same of me. Because I feel like I do have a fairly firm, I wouldn't say I have a firm biblical knowledge or training or anything, but I remember a lot and really, like, I remember a lot of stories and a lot of the, like, Bible school that I went to growing up in very vivid detail, and possibly because it was the closest thing to a classroom experience I had outside of homeschool, which was not quite a classroom experience. That's like one-on-one teaching. So maybe there's a social component there. And a lot of those, a lot of that is just stuck with me. So I feel like I can see and I have some of that knowledge, and I feel like I've internalized a lot of lessons in a lot of the stories that are just like, don't be shitty to people. Like, just don't be shitty to people. So yeah. College was interesting. So I went to a fairly small school. I had a few different options of schools to go to. And I ultimately decided on the one that was the closest, or the most equidistant between my previous home in Kentucky and my most recent home in Canada, which was a silly decision because I didn't have a car. So it's both directions were 5 hours at least, and so it didn't really make any sense logically, but that's what I did. Findlay was great in a lot of ways. I think that it took me a little bit to find my community. I didn't even remember this, but apparently the first semester, or the beginning of the first semester, the first few months, I was like not having it, and I hated it, and I told my parents, like, this is not, I don't want to be here, I'm gonna like transfer or something like that. I don't remember that at all. I must have blocked that out. It was, yeah. But I made some, I came out of that with that, even that time period with some strong friendships. And then I kind of found my people, if you will. I joined the Theta Chi fraternity, and it was all Greek life was pretty small. It was a campus of about 4,000, and Greek life was, I feel like, maybe 100 total. So small portion of a small campus, very different than state school or like a lot of other types of Greek life experiences. But I found a community of people that were kind of like-minded and enjoyed the same things, and just got along, and were also willing to, like, wanted to do good things and like make the world a better place, and be like good people. So I think that was good that I found that. I don't think I would have stayed there for 4 years if I hadn't found that. And I think it's been challenging since not being able to be back as much as I would like to be, because I still feel very connected to that as a group of people, so the actual people and the actual relationships, but also as an entity. I'm very proud of my school, my alma mater, and as well as Theta Chi and my involvement in Theta Chi. I think that something that I struggled with, and probably a reason why Theta Chi was something I got involved in too, was the campus was very much, as much as they didn't say so, was a very much a commuter campus. Very many kids that went there were from fairly nearby, so within maybe a 2-hour drive. And so a lot would stay there during the week and then go home on the weekend. And so I think as someone that didn't have that as an option, I didn't have a car, right? Like, I think that was one that was challenging at first, is because, like, even if I made kind of like friendships with a lot of these folks, they then weren't around. And a lot of the folks in the fraternity were from nearby as well, but some of them weren't, and a lot of them stuck around because of the fraternity and kind of because of the involvement, because they felt they had a community there. So in a lot of ways, it felt like maybe a community college campus or something where it's like kind of buzzing during the week, but then it totally tanks on the weekend. And I think it was really important for me and was very valuable to my experience, and hopefully others' experience by the fact that I joined as well, but that I got involved with the fraternity. And the fact that they were there and really, I think, became my family over the course of those then 3.5 years, which I like I said before, I wouldn't have gotten through or completed that experience without that. So I think that it was very meaningful to me to have that. Then and now, I mean, some of those people are the people I'm closest to. Some of the ones that I wasn't even the closest to then, I'm a lot closer to now, which is also interesting too. So, I was involved in Habitat for Humanity. My junior year, I went on the alternative spring break trip, which was a very amazing experience. It was to Biloxi, Mississippi, which was doing Hurricane Katrina cleanup still multiple years later. And that was actually my first exposure to AmeriCorps in action, I guess. I'd heard of AmeriCorps, I knew kind of what it was, but I met people that were Corps members in AmeriCorps and heard about their experiences. So we went to Biloxi, Mississippi, and it was just this really cool, intensive, both action-oriented week of like transformation, but also internal transformation and exposure and understanding of the issues of urban, the struggles both that this hurricane hit the lowest earning portion of the population the most, as well the inability to afford and to own your own housing limits so many from being able to come out of poverty. So in terms of educating people about what responsible home ownership means, getting them to invest in their own future and their own home through, even if they can't make a financial contribution, through a sweat equity contribution of putting in so many hours a week for every week until it's done, combined with donated efforts of materials, funds, and contractors' time. The Habitat is an organization that just does a lot of good in the world. So I was exposed to that, as well as exposed to the experience of this intensive week-long trip driving down from Findlay, Ohio to Biloxi, Mississippi with a group of folks, which were really cool people, and a group that I hadn't really been as exposed to, and also much more of that different demographic of like a lot of kind of week-longers, if you will, or I don't know quite how to put it, but I wasn't looking for the same thing at that point. So it was fine. We got along, so why wouldn't I do it, right? So I did that my junior year, and then I did it again my senior year, and both trips that time was to Birmingham, Alabama, and both trips were just very meaningful experiences, doing service and raising money to go do something selfless for a week. And I think ultimately that's what led me to being interested in national service and kind of sticking with that after college. In the beginning of my senior year, I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do? I got an email because I'd signed up for that AmeriCorps listserv to just get more information. I got an email and it said something about City Year and how it's this nonprofit with an education focus. And I was like, oh, well, after the service experience, I'm interested in nonprofits. I was already kind of interested in education, so this would be a great way to try them both out. This is perfect. So I applied, and I think this was in November. I was also applying for grad school at the time. I wasn't very far in that process. I was applying for grad school in art, specifically the painting and drawing program at The Ohio State University. And I think I got accepted into City Year before I found out about grad school, but I'd already decided to do it over grad school anyway. And then if I'd gotten into grad school, I might have deferred. But I didn't get into grad school, which is, whatever. I'm all right with that. And so then I was going to come out to City Year, and I had connected with someone on the website where we got to know people in advance, and I was planning on living with her. And so then she had gotten promotion to a senior core role. I was like, hey, you should reach out to ask about this, because I think it was kind of like because I think they still have a slot left, but also because I can't live with you if if you're like the different tier of person in the organization. So I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll reach out and find out about it. So they reviewed kind of my materials and then said, well, we'd like you to come out. And so I flew out to New Hampshire. I interviewed. I stayed with Megan McClure, who was then my boss the next year, but also has become one of my best friends. And it was this kind of whirlwind of learning, meeting the people, interviewing, living with the people that were currently doing this kind of senior core role, and figuring out if they wanted me for it, and me figuring out if I wanted for it. I'd already been accepted into the program. This was like kind of like the next level and like a leadership role, which I didn't really understand. I got it and accepted it, and then from about 3 weeks after I came out, I was having to lead people and was just kind of pushed into this role of more leadership than management, as they are things that I very much believe have different kind of foundations in what they mean and what they do. But mostly leading, sometimes kind of managing a team to results, and putting on this cross-state service learning program for middle schoolers. And it was good. It was a good experience. It really pushed me. I think that, just like some of the, when I was a teenager and moved out, I kind of like was pushed to mature faster. I think this in a different sort of way, like I was thrust into this leadership role, so it didn't mean that I wasn't still, being a goofball on the weekends and during the week sometimes, but I felt a responsibility and a certain ownership over doing it well and not wanting to screw it up. So I think that also kind of enabled me to take that leadership portion of it seriously, so that I was able to be successful in that year. After that year, I decided I was interested in coming back, so I applied and for the same, or not the same role again, but another senior core role. And I was responsible for doing a lot of the trainings and logistics around the 1 day a week that City Year core members receive, civic learning and social justice training and kind of school-based training, and figuring out what they're doing after their City Year experience, and their reflection exercises. So I was in charge of kind of all of those portions with the program, in cooperation with the program director. He kind of gave me my marching orders, and then I would work on them and kind of present this stuff. And that was a really cool experience too. I think that the team that we were on that year was a really close team, and I think that I formed a lot of friendships. And honestly, like similarly to my fraternity in college, there's a lot of reasons why I might not have made it through that experience if it wasn't for that how solid those friendships and those bonds were. I don't know if I got tired or what it was, but by the end I was not operating from a place of kind of selfless service anymore. I was kind of over it. And I think some of it was still being idealistic, but seeing things not being operated in an idealistic way. Some of it was just being burnt out and having done 50 plus hour weeks for a long time and just being done. So graduated, but but in good standing, great standing, I think, and maintained the relationships, and yeah, so that's a bit about my City Year experience. I think that it wasn't until the second year when we moved to Manchester that I really saw the need as extensively. I worked in Nashua my first year. I lived on the seacoast side of the state, but worked in Nashua for my focus of the service learning program. And I did see it here and there, but it was not as pervasive as once we moved to Manchester. Manchester is an amazing city. It has a rich history of immigrant populations, and I feel like it's just is an incredible place, and an incredible community, and has an incredible culture about it. It also has a lot of things that it struggles with. So I think that living there was interesting. I had the great fortune of being able to live within, it's a lot easier in Manchester than it is in other places, but within walking distance from work. So I walked to work a lot of the time. And I think that there's a component of when you walk a place, and I also like to run, and so I'll run in a lot of cities that I'm in for the first time. The first morning I'm there, or when I get a chance, I enjoy doing that. And you see different things and you absorb different things than when you drive through or past places, I think. So I think New Hampshire, I don't know if I'll ever live there again, but it will always have a very special spot in my heart for being able to understand what it means to be like a civic servant to a cause and to a community, and a community that sometimes, especially similarly with New Hampshire, outside of New England, doesn't necessarily, I don't know, is like, well, what need is there in New Hampshire? And New Hampshire is all white and like this and that. And neither of those things are true. There's a lot of need in New Hampshire, and it's not all white. And even if it was, and there was a lot of need, it still should help them, right? Like, so I think that I have a lot of close friends still there, and I imagine that it will be a place that I return to as much as I'm able to in the future as well. But I think that it's it's a great place. So something I've been reflecting on in preparation for Pinpoints is really like what the crux of my dislike for Bruce Springsteen is. And I think it's been an interesting experience because I've realized a few things. I've realized a few things in the process. So I've realized, number one, I don't think I got as entrenched in my view as I did until I met you, and you really liked Bruce Springsteen. And I think it progressively over time, I didn't like Bruce Springsteen more and more. So that's an interesting factoid. Two, doing a little bit of research recently and realizing that regardless of if I like it or not, there are a lot of reasons why Bruce Springsteen has been wildly successful. And I guess what I've realized is, while I cannot objectively say that there is good or bad music, and I can only say aesthetically if I enjoy it or not, I think that the saxophone is part of what takes away from that aesthetic pleasure for me in this instance. Not in all instances, but in the folk rock, Americana, just, I'm good without the sax. or the likelihood of me enjoying it is much higher if there's no sex. So I think those are two things about Bruce Springsteen. I think the third one is, while I don't enjoy it, I can't, just as with any art, I can't make a true assessment over whether it is objectively good or bad. I can say, I really don't care for it, and I don't. But I think that I've realized, like, some of that was just because of the banter, and because it was something for us to both get worked up about, and also because I think I've enjoyed in our friendship the ability to joke around and make fun and like tease about the silliest things, like making fun of you for liking Bruce Springsteen. Like I sent you a text the other day, or it's just for the video viewers. I sent Paul a text, and it was a picture of Bruce Springsteen at Mohegan Sun Casino that I had my fiance take when we were driving by. And I think the caption that I wrote was something like, "You'll be gambling with your eardrums." And it's fun. I think it's a way that we have found to bond over something that we don't share in common, which I feel like both takes a level of not taking ourselves too seriously, but also a commitment to never take the other person too seriously either.